Hey everybody, welcome back. I am here to teach the next part of our Operation Real Time Conspiracy Mission Skill Set. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we are in the middle of a live competition. There are folks all over the United States competing in a spy simulation, a spy game, similar to what we use at CIA and what other intelligence agencies use all around the world to train their field operatives in real time using a technique called just-in-time learning, which I covered in a previous video. Today's video, though, is all about the idea of analysis and how you actually pare through massive amounts of information to boil that information down into reasonable analysis, reasonable predictions, reasonable expectations, some sort of objective conclusion, rather than wild, frenzied ideas and thoughts and confusion. If you've been following the Everyday Espionage podcast, then you've already heard a audio introduction to something known as ACH, the analysis of competing priorities. The analysis of competing hypotheses. You can tell that I've been up late all night. So ACH, the analysis of competing hypotheses, is what I am here to teach you today, and I'm here to explain to you how you can use it in your everyday life and how you can use it as part of the current spy simulation if you are a competitor in Operation Real Time Conspiracy. So here's how it works. Essentially, we are all inundated with information. And from that information, we are expected to draw conclusions, draw informed decisions from that information. But the problem is that there's so much information, it's sometimes difficult to be able to prioritize and connect pieces that might be connected or might not be connected. And we're always challenged with the idea that we have these internal cognitive biases, these internal prejudices that make us want to skip steps and connect things that aren't actually objectively connected, just because of the way that we believe, the way that we feel, the way that we have been raised, or our education, or whatever cultural aspects define who we are. That's the challenge with something like ACH. It takes effort to apply the analysis of competing hypotheses, because you have to fight against all those natural instincts that you have that make you want to jump to conclusions. So here is a very simple introduction to how you can use ACH to reach a conclusion. So first, you have to build some kind of board. Now, I'm actually giving you this video and it's done in a mirror, so I had to write everything backwards, so I hope it looks right. It looks pretty right to me. But let's just say that you have a notepad or any other kind of whiteboard, anything that you use to take notes. You create a chart that will become a list of your hypotheses. Hypotheses are the conclusions that you could reach based on a given set of information. Those are your hypotheses. What you want to do is be able to create a list of conclusions and have a space beside that list where you can then prioritize or rank those conclusions. So let's talk about this in terms of a real life example. Coffee is oftentimes something that goes missing in my house. I will look at the cabinets on Monday morning and we'll have plenty of coffee. And then I'll come back to those same cabinets on Tuesday morning and the coffee is gone. And I don't know why. So I usually just get upset and then go buy more coffee, or I just complain to my wife. But what I should really be doing is the ACH process. Let's make a list of competing hypotheses about what happened to that coffee. So what could be happening to that coffee? Well, one hypothesis could be that someone else drank it. That's not specific enough. Who is that someone else? So one hypothesis could be, my wife drank the coffee. Another hypothesis could be that the children got into the cupboard and spilled the coffee. Another hypothesis could be that my wife opened the coffee and saw that there was something wrong with it, so she threw it away. Another hypothesis could be that my father-in-law came to visit and he wanted coffee, so my wife made it for him. So you're seeing that we're listing off these different conclusions that are based off of the information we have. The information we have being, there was coffee on Monday morning, there is no coffee on Tuesday morning, where could the coffee be? You can go through a whole list of different competing hypotheses. And you want your hypotheses to go from wildly, outlandishly unbelievable, like you don't have to go as far as thinking that like magic elves came and stole the coffee. If you want to, you're welcome to. If that fits your ideas, or if that fits your Christmas narrative, but you want to stay in the realm of reality. So you could say that a thief broke into the house and stole nothing except the coffee. That could be something that you put on your ACH. Now, here's why that's important, because as you list out every possible hypothesis, which is important for the ACH, you want to put down every possible hypothesis, from the outlandish to the assumptions that you make, right? But then as you look at the information available to you, what you do is you mark each hypothesis with a marking anytime the information at hand confirms that hypothesis. So for example, if it was something like, I think that my wife drank the last of the coffee, versus I think that my father-in-law drank the last of the coffee, I can put a mark for both because the coffee is gone. I can put a second mark here because my wife was in the house. I can't really put a second mark here because my father-in-law hasn't been in the house. I can put another mark here because my wife was tired yesterday. My father-in-law, I don't know if he was tired yesterday, so I don't know if he was here or not. But you see quickly that as you start making these markings, and then down here is the elf stole the coffee, right? I have no data to back up the fact that the elf stole the coffee. But as you start to list this out, what you'll get is a prioritized list of information that corroborates whatever your hypothesis might be. And as you get that information, it grows over time, and you start to see that there are certain hypotheses that clearly lead other hypotheses. And this allows you to objectively decide which hypothesis you are going to move forward with as a most likely conclusion. It is not bulletproof, right? Because there's always more information that comes out. As soon as I find out that my father-in-law came over yesterday between the hours of 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock while I was out with a friend, it changes everything. All that data changes. Every hypothesis is still valid, but the number values change. So what may have been my belief that it was impossible that my father-in-law came over and drank the coffee now all of a sudden becomes quite probable. That is how you use ACH, the analysis of competing hypotheses. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because those of you competing in Operation Real Time right now are about to have to exercise a real-time ACH, a real-time analysis of competing hypotheses. Before I introduce to you what you will be doing, let's go to the leaderboards first. Here is the current rack and stack of how the competitors are doing. I have 10 competitors on the board competing in Operation Real Time right now, 10 competitive teams of 2. At the top, I have Multiversal Exports, Blazing Saddles, and Angens Clandestinas, all tied at 18 points for first place. I have another tie, another three-way tie at 17 points between 008, Tenacious J, and Mila, all at 17 points. There's only 1 point that separates our first place and second place groups of 3. So we have a tight, awesome competition here as people are feeling their way through all of the different tasks. I also want to highlight that we have 3 tasks on the board. The third task is due, and I have yet to add all the points from that third task. But we have multiple folks who have had perfect scores on previous tasks. We've also had folks who have come in at half scores on previous tasks. So at the bottom, pulling up the rear of our current stack, we have Species 7349 in third to last place, Northern Lights in second to last place, Shadow of Darkness currently in last place, and a big piece of that is because of penalties and late turn-ins. I don't want anyone to lose points because they're turning something in late or they're making an error that could be fixed. Make sure that you lean on the community in the Spy Tribe on Discord for any questions you have. I won't be able to answer your questions in real time because I would be giving you an unfair advantage. Take your questions to your teammates, take your questions to the Spy Tribe community board. I know that you are all in competition with each other, but this is a good community that can teach you how to apply the skills that we're learning and applying in real time with Operation Real Time. So there we have 10 competitors. We know that we have 2 three-way ties for first and second. We know who's bringing up the rear, and we know that this all could change in a matter of a few minutes when I update the next round of scores. What am I seeing from my end in terms of mistakes and errors and points? First, a lot of you are coming in with assumptions. There are assumptions that you're making based on open source data that I'm sending to you or intelligence that's being sent to you from a foreign player in the game. When you make an assumption, you run the risk of reaching a conclusion without properly thinking it through. The fastest way to get past that idea of assumption is to use the tool of assessment. Remember that assessment is based on objective reality, whereas assumption is based on subjective perspective. You can go back to the podcast to review that. You can bounce that idea off with your friends. The more tired you get, the more stressed you get, the more task saturated you get, the more likely you are to lean on your assumptions. So try to fight that. I've already started seeing people come through with analysis, with conclusions and recommendations based off of assumptions with the very limited data that you've already seen. A second mistake is that people are not yet vetting their information. Remember, in shadow lessons, I taught you, along with Michelle Rigby-Assad, the importance of vetting information. You need independent sources saying the same thing before you can trust that the information is vetted and factual. Until that information is vetted and factual, you have to make sure that you are using word specificity when you communicate, that it is simply a possibility or a potentiality when you say something that has not been vetted. Once it has been vetted, you can start using confidence words. You can say it's likely, it's most likely, it's unlikely, whatever it might be. But make sure you use that vetting before you reach a conclusion. If you send me a task where you're making a statement as if it is a conclusion without having multiple sources of information to vet it, that is going to result in a reduction in points. The last thing I want to highlight is the critical thinking aspect of this game. What's happening in your head can only be communicated through what you write to me. So I appreciate those of you who are trying to make things short and succinct, but if you make something short and succinct, I have no idea how you're reaching that conclusion. If your conclusion is just a little bit off, because your thinking and your analysis is a little bit off, then that results in less points being taken off. But if all you do is you send me one simple sentence and that one simple sentence is not fully correct, that's a larger error than if you sent me 3 or 4 sentences explaining how you reached your conclusion. So when you have a word cap or a word limit, by all means stay within the instructions for completing these Operation Real-Time tasks. But don't go to the extreme of making yourself so short and so concise that I have no idea how you're reaching your conclusions, because that just leaves me no room to be able to assess the thinking process versus the conclusion itself. Plus, now that you know a little bit more about ACH, I'm hoping that you'll be able to have a very robust explanation and an analytical thinking process to boost that critical thinking aspect of your score moving forward. All right, so where does this leave us after this 12-minute video? If you are still watching the video, it's most likely because you are competing in Operation Real Time, and here is your next task. I need you to create a list of the top 3 most likely hypotheses behind the attacks that are happening in Amundi right now. I need you to compile all the information, all the intelligence, all the open source news articles you have, everything that you have read about in your studies of Neyman, in the Neyman RIS fact book. Compile that information together, create your ACH, prioritize the hypotheses, and give me the top 3 hypotheses that you have that explain what is happening in Amundi right now. This task is due at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. I need to see, in 200 words or less, your assessment of the top 3 hypothetical explanations for what is happening in Amundi with these civilian attacks today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in my inbox, Andy@everydayspy.com. If you are not competing in Operation Real Time, you'll be able to keep up with a little bit of what's happening if you follow this YouTube channel and if you take a look at the fact book on everydayspy.com/operations. everydayspy.com/operations will take you to the Operation Real Time homepage and give you access to the Neyman World Factbook. Neyman is the fictitious country where all everyday spy training happens. It's the exact same process that we see happen in Mossad and FSB, with CIA, with Mexican intelligence. All the elite intelligence units in the world use a fictitious training environment because that way they can talk about things like intel and terrorist attacks without setting off world alarms with major news broadcasters, because no news broadcaster is going to write a story about an attack in the country of Naaman, because Naaman doesn't exist anywhere in the real world. It only exists in the training environment of Everyday Spy. So there you go. Task 4, 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. I need to see the top 3 priorities, your top 3 hypotheses explaining the attacks that are happening in Northern Normandy using your ACH in 200 words or less. I will see you there. Godspeed, Everyday Spy.